atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a kamen rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me, as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I am Rex.
And we are back at it again here in 2024.
It has been 2024 for a little bit.
It has, but by now we're we're a fourth into the month, or oh my god,
a month.
We're a fourth into the year,
right?
But
I mean, by the time this comes out, it'll actually be like almost a third, or I guess by the time it comes out, it will be a full fourth in the year, I suppose.
Yes, that's why I just said that.
Shut up.
So this is a little awkward. So we're recording ahead of time so that we never get behind. So we're actually recording like an episode ahead of the next one to actually come out. So by the time this comes out, we will have seen Godzilla Kong: The New Empire.
Yeah.
And you will have already heard our thoughts. So that's why you won't hear us talking about that movie as if we've already seen it.
Mm-hmm.
But just with that out of the way, I guess
which is maybe for the better, because hopefully you might get a little less of us complaining about it.
Yeah, you'll so just to say, you're going to get 2 episodes without a lack of complaining, and then you're going to get more. So you're going to get like a month off of us complaining about the movie, and then you're just going to get complaint after complaint.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, we are here again, and we are ready to talk about whatever we're going to talk about, which there's a couple things on the docket today to kind of discuss here. But first and most importantly, Rex, how have you been?
Oh, I've been doing pretty good so far. Been having a bit of fun these past few weekends. I mean, part of the reason that, we're recording this episode in particular so far in advance is because, next weekend, sometime next week for me, I'm going on a little holiday for a few days. So, that'll be fun. I still don't entirely know what I'm going to do for most of that holiday, but, I'll figure it out.
So, you don't know what you're going to be doing at all, or do you have an idea?
I have some idea, like the whole reason I'm going is because a family member of mine wants to meet Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki, who are both like the main stars of Supernatural.
Okay.
So I'm going to be taking a photo of them at a convention. That's the main thing the trip was planned for. I think my hotel is connected to a bar and a club or something, so I will probably go down there at least one night.
You and your bars and clubs.
Hey, they're fun. I may have permanent hearing damage now, especially in my left ear, but they are fun. I'll give them that. And yeah, I've got a couple other ideas. I want to go to the IMAX theater. Because there aren't many IMAX theaters in Australia. I've never seen a movie in IMAX, so I want to see what it's like. So I'll probably go see Dune 2 again. In IMAX this time, since that'll be the only thing they're showing.
It's a shame you're not going 3 weeks later, because you could see.
I know, right?
Godzilla Kong.
I know, right? I mean, maybe Dune 2 will be better.
Maybe.
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 Maybe. Just a little maybe.
I want to know what you're drinking because I'm not even remotely that hopeful.
No. Hey, I'm trying to not be too much. I'm not trying to like beat a dead horse right now. Give me about 5 minutes,
fair.
and I'll beat the dead horse.
I was gonna say here in a little bit.
But right now, I'm holding the horse. I'm not beating it to death yet.
You got it in a chokehold, and you're
Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. If that's sure, whatever. We'll go with that. I don't know if that makes it any better or worse. But yeah, speaking of the IMAX theater, I've actually been to the movies quite a bit this past week, and I mean, before I get to that, I should probably ask you, how have you been first?
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. It's fine. We don't need to hear how I've been.
Oh, why not?
I don't know. That was sarcasm.
Then are you gonna go ahead?
Fine, if you really want to force it out of me.
I insist.
I see. Honestly, I mean, I don't really know how to answer that. I mean, I'm not in a. I'm doing pretty good, all things considered.
Right.
I'm just horribly busy as of lately. It's starting to warm up,
So I've heard,
which is nice. I'm not somebody who likes cold weather. I enjoy the warm weather. So being back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Oh, that's right. It was like winter for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was winter. Oh my God. -30. Jesus. It was awful. I almost died. Especially the days I had to like push carts at my.
I remember you calling me one day and you were like, "So Rex, I might fall off a cliff and die." I remember you calling me one day when I was like on my way to the gym. I was like, "What the?" I was so confused and like, "What?"
It was probably the night that I had to go out and push carts for an hour, and I had like one layer of like warm clothes on. And
no, it was like when you were like driving up or down a cliff, I think.
Oh, that's right. That's right, because I almost like fell off into a ravine going to work that day. And and so I like called you so that somebody would get to hear my final words before I potentially died. Because just like 2 days prior, I like spun out into the ditch on that hill, and it was like worse. So I was like, I'm just gonna call Rex. Rex can if I'm dying, I can scream out my password so he can log in and at least say like, hey, he's dead. Rip, I guess. That's right. Because it was like snowy and icy, and I was like, oh boy. And so yeah, I called you to at least have somebody be there for my final moments. But I didn't die. Thank God I didn't die. But that was a couple months ago. Now we're back to warm weather for the most part. It's still like at night it gets pretty cold. And like we just had snow like 2 days ago, and then today it was like 60s. So it's great in my area. Like it is so like the weather's literally like a tug of war game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been getting better. Like I can wear shorts and like a hoodie. Not a hoodie, sweats and a hoodie. I can wear shorts and a short sleeve t-shirt. I can start wearing my overshirts unbuttoned. Like it's nice. I can start wearing my summer attire. My cologne collection of summer colognes is getting back into style, I guess. So stuff like that's been really, really pleasant. Outside of that, it's just I've been surprisingly like the amount of podcasts, like I was talking to you before the show. Like the next 3 months of my life is filled with podcasts, live streams, and projects.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple podcasts I've been doing. Kaiju Conversation Live is something that I do monthly. We're doing our show. The Yuzo Blu-ray, that just came, that got announced a couple weeks ago, and by this point it'll be over a month. It's about to start shipping based off of the stuff on the website, which is pretty exciting. It's been one of those things where it's like, here we are, that's about to start coming out. I just got to talk with McClintock from Titanic Creations. Did an interview with him for Kaiju Conversation Live, which you can also hear an audio version on the podcast feed.
Yes.
That was pretty cool. I got another project in the works that I can't talk about. That by the time this comes out will probably be pretty deep into pre-production. That will be another big official thing for me. And then, at this time, I've officially decided, and I've started work on my G-Fest short film. I will be competing again for the short film contest that should be a contest this year. Fingers crossed. They're bringing back the contest part to the contest. Last year I did SOS Seek Shelter. This year I have another one which I won't talk about until after G-Fest. Once the poster's out, that'll be a different story. But for now, it's just this project I'm working on, so that's pretty exciting. And then, more recently, I've just been cleaning my room, organizing my rooms. Today specifically, I went and I spent $200 on getting frames for stuff, putting up posters and whatnot, ordering stuff. So that's all good to have and whatnot. I have a coworker. His birthday's in March, which is the month we're recording this in, and by now it'll be past. And he has been begging me. He's been like, "Hey, Elijah, can I come over to your house? That's my birthday wish. I want to come see your collection." And I've been on the fence. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm not one to broadcast. I've never showed off my collection to remotely its complete fullness. I'll send pictures of new stuff I've bought or my physical media collection and stuff, but I don't show off everything.
Right. I think even I've seen quite everything.
You're one of the few people who has seen most. I know there's 3 people who have seen everything. You're right below them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's pretty much what I've been doing for the last we recorded last week, right?
No.
Oh. Look, my time is not a thing for me.
My brother
I stay up.
It's been almost a month.
Has it?
Almost.
Huh.
It's been at least 3 weeks.
Huh. Clearly, I will say this.
3 weeks exactly, sorry.
The last probably 3 weeks, honestly, the idea and concept of time has slowly just disappeared from my peripheral.
See,
I literally just exist.
See, that's probably going to happen to me very soon.
Yeah, so actually I know you kind of talked about this, but I'm curious how you just started a new chapter of your life.
Yes.
How's that been? What can you tell me about that? Because you honestly haven't really said a whole lot about it.
It's pretty chill. I'm studying film, we haven't really gotten into a lot of the meat and potatoes of it yet because it's only the first week of it thus far. And unfortunately, I miss like half of the second week and half of the third week because I'm not there. I'm on holiday, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, it's pretty chill. I've got an assessment to do like tomorrow.
What's the assessment?
Oh, it's just like a self-intro video. It'll be pretty chill.
Oh.
I just need to get around and actually do it.
Hello, my name is Rex. I co-host and edit the podcast Kaiju Conversation. I am also
monsters.
a writer. Huh?
I like big monsters.
I like giant monsters in Tokusatsu, and I like pretty boys transforming into pretty cool superheroes. And I went through an edgelord phase, and I'm still not entirely out of it because one of my favorite television shows is called Garo. I'm sure nobody's heard of it.
You know, speaking of Garo, that's a great transition to what Tokusatsu we've watched recently, I think.
Oh, yeah? Have you watched some Garo?
I did, actually, because, you know, the new show, Garo Hagane o Sugumono, yeah, I just watched the most recent episode today, so you know, there's been a couple of episodes recently, and yeah, it's getting a bit better, I think. It's not like one of the best shows in the franchise, but it's been pretty alright. I can definitely tell they're limited a bit by what they can do in like budget, which I'm not surprised because, you know, Garo hasn't been the most successful franchise in recent years.
Right.
So yeah, I hope the show does well enough to justify like a future series being longer, like back to 25 episodes and a bit of a higher budget, you know. But for what it's worth, all the new suits have been really cool. I just wish they'd make new Garo suits.
Do they not?
The two suits they've used for Garo thus far are just like reuses from Garo Goldstorm, the show, which came out in 2015.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, really good design. And like the new suits that they have made for this show, which they've made a few of them, to be fair, and they look really good. Even like the horrors, which in the past few Garo shows have been like all CG, they've like actually like started like they've gotten back into doing practical effects for the horrors, which is great to see.
Interesting. So how is it ranking so far in the rest of your Garo viewing?
God, it's been a while since I've looked at it's, you have to remember, it's been like almost 3 years now since I watched all of Garo. I don't know, I'd put it in like the upper middle, I'd say. Like, it's not bad. It's pretty alright. I just wouldn't quite call it like the peak of Garo, you know. It doesn't help that the official subtitles are also pretty bad.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're machine translated.
See, I actually recently heard, for Yuzo, I needed to hire a translator.
Mm-hmm.
And I had mentioned it to somebody, and he was like, yeah, in Japan, they kind of stick to AI translations now for their translations because they don't want mistranslations and they don't want agendas pushed for their translatings. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what it is. I think it's more just like it's cheaper and more convenient.
Probably, yeah.
But that was the explanation I was given. I was kind of like, huh. Okay.
To be honest, I can buy that potentially being like at least a factor influencing it, because I know there's been a bit of controversy in like the anime community around that sort of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember. I want to say it was a Crunchyroll release where there was some sort of.
I think it's a few like Crunchyroll and Funimation things. I don't exactly know.
Yeah, I don't remember. I remember hearing about it through the grapevine of people complaining.
Right. But yeah, no, either way, please have actual people translate to English. Thanks.
Yeah, because it's the thing about Japanese is if you do direct translations, it sounds like it is broken English.
Right, because Japanese as a language just does not work the same way English does.
Correct.
That's the thing. It's like, I mean, like when it comes to machine translations, if you're intuitive enough, you can kind of like look at like the things that broke in English and like interpret what it's actually getting at. And like especially with like when you're watching a show like Garo, like I am, like for most lines that are like weirdly translated, I know enough I can understand enough roughly of like some of the Japanese dialogue where I can actually interpret what it's actually getting at, better. But at the same time, there's still a couple lines that have had me like stumped, that have had me like, what?
Right.
But yeah, outside of that, I've actually watched a little bit recently. I've watched a couple kaiju movies recently. Like I rewatched Godzilla vs. Gigan. I saw War of the Gargantulas finally. And I even saw a little film called Yuzo, the biggest battle in Tokyo.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder how you got to see that.
I might have helped out on a slight bit on a little project that someone was working on.
Interesting. I feel like I might know about this project.
I think you might.
Huh. Well, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah. And then I also got to attend. There was like a little J horror like weekend in my area that I was going to attend, and I was going to attend a couple days of it so I could see like Suicide Club, Ichi the Killer, and Labyrinth of Dreams. I want to say the last film was called. It's a Gakuru Ishi film. But sadly, I only ended up going the day of Ichi the Killer. But yeah, I did see Ichi the Killer. And then after that film, I decided, you know what? I'm going to stay for Audition as well, which was playing right after.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a Takashi Miike double feature.
Well, there you go.
And it was a lot of fun. I actually really like Audition a lot more on the second watch. Like, it might actually be like top 3 J-horror films for me, alongside like Ring and Tanga.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I really like Audition. There were some parts that like didn't entirely click with me on the first watch, but like on the second watch, I was just like, I was with the movie all the way through. I loved it a lot.
Huh. See, I haven't seen that one yet myself.
It's really good. You should watch it. Yeah, outside of that, this is a bit more mainstream and less tokusatsu, but it's kind of along the lines of kaiju. I saw Dune Part 2.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I think someone else here may have seen it as well.
Is this our seamless segue into what tokusatsu I've watched?
Yeah, it just might be.
Ah. Well, it's funny you say that, Rex, because I got a special story to talk about Dune Part 2. I got invited to a premiere. How? I don't know. I just, in my email, like I got a notification on my phone. It was, would you like to see Dune Part 2 for free early? And I'm like, what? So like, I disregarded it for like an hour or two because I'm like, whatever. And then I was like, wait a minute. Why am I like, I want to go see more movies. Why am I not like jumping in on this? So I was like, okay, let's take a look here. Let's see what's going on with it. And yeah, I got invited to a premiere format early, like a week early from the release, to go see it. It was a promotional thing for the theater chain. And so I was running a little bit late, but I made it there. It was packed. Yeah. It was a packed theater. And before the movie even started, they like came out and they're like, we have cameras all over this theater. If we see a single phone screen light up for anything, you're getting kicked out. Right. And I'm like, oh wow, like they mean business. Like this is a legitimate, like they're not messing around here. So after that, the movie started, and
damn, I remember my Monarch screening it being a bit more chill than that.
Yeah, no, they were like, we are not tolerating a thing. And at one point, like my watch screen turned on because I have a Samsung watch, and it was on theater mode, and the brightness was all the way turned down. So like my phone was off, so it wasn't getting notifications or anything. Mm-hmm. But I guess I accidentally like bumped the power button, so it turned on. Now like the light it produces is nothing. Like it doesn't produce any light when you have the brightness all the way down and it's in theater mode.
But I take it.
But the whole time, I was like, "Oh no, oh no, oh no!" Like I was like, "I'm waiting for them to walk over here and tell me I have to leave." Oh no! And I was like, "Okay, so when they come over here, I can be like, it's my watch. I bumped it. I'm so sorry. I'm watching the movie. Please don't kick me out." But they never came over. So I think it was so like low brightness, and they could tell that it was a watch that they didn't do anything.
Or they just didn't notice at all.
Or they didn't notice.
Which I feel is a bit more likely.
Probably. But man, that was a movie. That was a really good movie.
Oh, yeah.
So I had not seen the first Dune. So here we were like the day before, and I finally got off work, and I was busy the whole day. And so it's like 1:00 at night, and I have to be to work at 5 a.m. And I'm like, okay, how am I, like, I have to watch Dune, and there's no way that I can get off work, come home, shower, dress, like make myself look presentable, watch Dune, drive to the theater, and get in before it's already started. So I was like, okay, so what are we going to do? So I was like, okay, I'm just going to watch Dune now. I'll sleep for an hour, go to work, and then I'll come home, I'll shower, I'll get dressed, and I'll go. Dune Part 1 is a 2.5 hour movie. So I started this at 1. I didn't finish till 3:30, and then I went to bed at 4, woke up at 5, got ready for work, went to work, worked from 5:30 to like, it ended up being like 4. Because I can't get out on time. They don't let me leave early or on time ever. Actually, no, I think I ended up only being, I got out at 3, which was 30 minutes late. But it was earlier than I normally get out, so I was really happy about that. So then I got home, I showered, I got ready, all that. I ate food, and then I went to the theater, sat down, they did their spiel, watched the movie. So I watched Dune Part 1 and Part 2 since our last recording. Man, Dune Part 2 is beautiful. These are my first 2 movies by this director. He also did Arrival and Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I haven't seen either of those films. I've only seen Dune and Dune Part 2.
So, like, this was a whole new experience, and, like, visually speaking, the film is absolutely astonishing. I will say, I think the writing in Dune Part 2 does fall into the Hollywoodisms that you would see.
How so?
With the more comedic lines.
I honestly don't really remember there being much comedy outside of like some of the actors' performances.
It was specifically comedy between Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, like them two, and then comedy between Timothée Chalamet and Josh Brolin.
I'm completely blanking on that. I can maybe vaguely remember Josh Brolin having like a funny line or two. But I don't know. I think I did. I think I laughed chuckled a little bit at like Dave Bautista's character. Like, not in a bad way, mind you. I just think he gives a really fun performance. And
his acting in these movies are beautiful.
Dave Bautista is a talented actor. Like, for a guy who's like became an actor after being like a wrestler for however many years, he's like one of the best like wrestler turned actors, like in Hollywood at least.
He's definitely better than The Rock.
Well, yeah, and from what I hear, also nicer.
Yeah.
But like, no, I thoroughly enjoyed Dune Part 2 a lot. Like, I liked the first film. I haven't seen it since it came out. I liked the first film. I wanted to rewatch it. I actually was originally going to go to an early screening of like a double feature of Dune Part 1 and Part 2. But I ended up being unable to make that. So I just ended up seeing Part 2 like the day it came out in my country. And yeah, I'll probably try and rewatch Part 1 before my trip, so that I'll have rewatched it before I go see Dune Part 2 on IMAX. I think that's what I'm thinking about doing.
See, I saw a comparison on Twitter actually for Dune Part 2 as it's the Empire Strikes Back of the modern day.
Oh, I thought that while I was watching the movie. I'm like, this is one of those epics that like happens like once every like 2 decades or so. This is like Empire Strikes Back, but then also I'm like kind of like Lord of the Rings as well, in like that sense of like being a massive like I want to say trilogy epic. This Dune 3 isn't confirmed, but it's very likely to happen.
But I thought because it's Dune Messiah, and he's already the director's already confirmed he's working on it.
It hasn't been greenlit yet.
Gotcha. But based off of the box office numbers, it will be greenlit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I 100% think it will happen. I don't know when it'll come out, but I definitely think a third film will happen.
Right.
And if they adapt Messiah, then that'll be interesting.
But outside of that, outside of the Dune talk, I did watch a Tokusatsu film.
Oh, really?
I was going to watch 2. I was going to watch Ninja vs. Shark, but I was so exhausted that I couldn't, so I ended up pausing it, and I never got back to it.
Damn.
But I did watch Takashi Miike's most recent fantasy movie, The Great Yokai War Guardians.
Oh, that's right.
Which has a lot of cool actors that I recognized, a lot of cool characters that when I saw them, I got excited. In a way, it was almost like a Marvel movie where it's like, oh, there's that character. Oh, there's that character. It was kind of like that, but with cryptids and yokai, which was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually enjoyed it more than the first Yokai War that Miike did.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the final act of the film, which is where Daimajin is most prominently, well, he's not Daimajin. Great Bujin, I think is what he's called.
Uh-huh.
When he appears, it kind of gets awful. I did not care for the ending. I did not care for how they concluded it. It was a very yokai conclusion, but I also just didn't care.
Uh-huh.
It was such a strong, like, it felt like a Showa yokai film that Daiei would have produced in the 60s up until the final fight, and then it was like, oh, this isn't, this is not the grandiose yokai ending it could be. And that's something I think that the yokai franchise has kind of, if I'm going to be honest, one of the biggest issues I've had for the last 3 installments. So in the Yokai Monster series, you have 100 Monsters, Spook Warfare, along with Ghosts, the Great Yokai War, and then the Great Yokai War Guardians. The issue with, along with Ghost, the Great Yokai War, and the Great Yokai Guardians is the fact that they're aimed too much towards children. Now, yokai, like there's Yokai Watch, which is an anime made for kids. Yokai were stories you would tell children. That's how they got their start. Manga based after yokai are aimed at younger audiences. So it makes sense that those would be what the films are aimed towards, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like Takashi Miike, he has started to do more family films. The Great Yokai War was kind of the beginning of that for him. So, he's doing more fantasy films that, kids can watch for all audiences and whatnot.
God, Miike and kids movies that'd be a crazy contrast from the title card of Itchy the Killer. I'll tell you that much.
Exactly.
Oh no, you don't understand what I mean.
Well, I do, and to an extent, because I have watched some of Miike's horror work. Not a lot of it, but like I've seen One Missed Call, I've seen Imprint, which Imprint's kind of on that same wavelength. But the biggest issue, so 100 Monsters is amazing.
So I've heard.
Truly remarkable. Spook Warfare is really, really good. Spook Warfare is the film that got remade into The Great Yokai War. Oh. Because Spook Warfare's Japanese name is Yokai Daisenso, which translates to Great Yokai War.
Oh.
So that Spook Warfare is the original Great Yokai War, followed by Miike's film, followed by the sequel to the Miike film.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, and both of them are really good.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been able to figure out is it comes down to 100 Monsters is a straight-up J-horror film.
Right.
Spook Warfare is a horror movie with some comedic elements, which is what the yokai are, Kappa especially.
Right.
But just in general, a lot of yokai have comedic, what we would think is comedic quirks and whatnot.
Right.
But since then, along with Ghost, is yokai helping kids get to their family and not be killed. Mm-hmm. The Great Yokai War is about a kid, played by a young Ryunosuke Kamiki, being the warrior, the legendary warrior that he's destined to be, to help fight against this yokai that's trying to kill all of the good yokai. And then the Great Yokai War Guardians is about two brothers learning the values of brotherhood and helping fight and save the world from yokaiju.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all based around children.
Mm-hmm.
That has not helped the franchise. And the Great Yokai War Guardians flopped, to my understanding, at the box office. Say goodbye to your Daimajin remake. Say goodbye to another yokai film. Say goodbye to Gamera coming back. And then I guess Rebirth also underperformed. From what I've heard, but I have nothing to back that up.
Right. It's more just like rumors and speculation, to be fair.
And the main person who has talked about it is somebody who is very much not reliable, so I don't take his word as actual qualitative comments on what's going on. So, but in general, it bombed. And I understand why. I think what yokai are missing is that horror aspect. The thing about yokai is they're mysterious creatures that cannot be defined. Some are good, some are bad, some are in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And if they were to do a yokai film that had horror elements, more so than what the Great Yokai War and Guardians have, I think it would benefit the series. I think it would do better. And it is a little disappointing. Like, Miike could do a really cool yokai film, but he's stuck making a fantasy children's family movie that doesn't, I think, hold up to the amazingness that is 100 Monsters or Spook Warfare.
Mm. I mean, either way, I am definitely interested in checking out the Miike movies because, like, I feel like Miike is a very good choice for movies based around yokai. So I'm very curious to check them out.
Have you watched any of them?
No, haven't seen any of them.
So I would highly recommend at least the first three. Now, like you said, you want to see the Miike stuff, which is the last two.
I want to see them all. Make no mistake. Because I'm especially interested in like the first film because I have actually heard some really good stuff about the first film.
Yeah, and I just in general, I think the first two yokai films are some of Daiei's best tokusatsu projects they've done. Period. I would put them up with like the Heisei Gamera trilogy.
Damn. High praise.
The first two Daimajin films, the first two yokai films, and then Kaneko's Gamera trilogy, I think are all on the same level.
Damn.
In my opinion, at least.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of those, that's all the tokusatsu that I've watched.
Damn, is that it? I thought we'd be like covering a movie or something. Are we covering Dune 2? Is that
would be kind of cool, but we would also need to cover Dune 1.
Oh, that's true. I mean, that didn't stop us with like Shin Ultraman or Kamen Rider or Godzilla vs. Kong.
See, I got nothing.
Yeah, because I'm not wrong. But what are we doing? Are we doing Dune 2 or what?
See, I don't know.
God damn it. You mean you didn't plan for this?
Look, man, like I said, time has just been something I don't even know exists.
Well, yeah, last year, around this time that this episode will be coming out, April, we did a thing called Kawasaki Month, where we watched a few of Minoru Kawasaki's films. Do you think that... Well, I did recently watch the Rug Cup, so maybe we should cover that, I think. And, Kawasaki Month, why not?
You mean Zura Deka or Detective Zura?
Yeah.
You know, I did watch that.
Oh, good.
I didn't think about that.
All right, I think we found a movie.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So where do we start, Rex?
What is this film? It's a kind of crazy 70s Japanese detective drama parody. Well, the film came out in 2006, but it's a parody of those 70s films. I should clarify. Right.
And to my understanding, it took Kawasaki, like this was an idea in his head for about 10 years.
I mean, from what I was reading, like a lot of ideas for his films are something that like he'll be drinking with some friends or talking to random people and they'll exchange some ideas and like he'll write them down and then he'll be like, these are awful, but he's going to keep them ideas and then just someday after time he compares it to like wine. You have to let him age and then after some time he'll just take them and roll with them.
And this is certainly an interesting film. Like you said, it was inspired by 1970s Japanese cop shows. When I was doing some research and whatnot, one of the cop shows that was cited was Taiyo no Horyo, which translates to Roar at the Sun, which was a Toho cop show. It ran from 1972 until 1986. With 718 episodes.
Oh, wow.
And it even had a sequel show that only ran for, I think, about, I want to say it was like 18 episodes. And another television show it was inspired by was Shiroi Kiba, which translates to White Fangs, which was a Nippon TV series that ran from April 6th to September 28th of 1974 for 26 episodes. And get this, Rex.
Oh.
The main actor was Hiroshi Fujioka.
Oh!
Kamen Rider #1.
He's played a detective in a few things, hasn't he, actually? No, I'm thinking
he has.
I mean, he gets a cameo in like Kamen Rider Agito's movie as like one of the detectives, and And he was in like a Michelle Yeoh movie with Hiroyuki Sanada as well, I think.
Huh.
So, or maybe it was the sequel to that, actually, I think. Sorry. Yeah, I think it was a sequel where he's like a detective.
And then the final thing so a lot of this stuff was stuff that Kawasaki was inspired by. It was mostly television shows and whatnot he grew up with.
Right.
But something that also inspired him, which I thought was interesting, was Die Hard, which, thinking about that, you can kind of tell with the whole terrorist and bomb whole aspect and whatnot.
I guess. I didn't really think about that because admittedly I've never seen Die Hard. But yeah, I guess maybe. From what I know of the premise.
So it's kind of interesting, all these influences kind of helped Kawasaki form this very interesting film that I'm kind of excited to cover. So,
do you have any other interesting facts, or should we begin? Because I didn't have too much, all things considered. I have a couple interview quotes I wrote down that I might depending on how relevant they are, I might try and get a couple things in, but I didn't end up having a huge amount on the film.
Yeah, so for this, there was a making of featurette on the DVD that I owned that I watched. I
have access to that, sadly.
And then there was also a press conference interview and an introduction. But if I'm going to be honest, for the most part, there wasn't really everything I kind of said here was pretty much all that I could really get from it.
Right.
The film was shot in 8 days, which makes sense. It's about a 79-minute, 80-minute movie.
Yeah, it's like an 80-minute movie. Yeah.
And it's
only
all
a limited number of sets and all that, so
right.
Makes sense.
So it's not like there's they did a huge feat. It makes sense for what the level of the film was.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't really a lot on the film. I went up and I pulled some articles and resources from the time. I found a magazine that was available that I translated with some comments from the lead actor in Kawasaki, which is where I got some of the influences and whatnot. But for the most part, there wasn't really a whole lot on the production.
Yeah. And there's even less on the sequel.
I do have some stuff on the sequel, but I'll talk about that when we get through the rest of the film. I do want to note that all of the crew, based off of what I saw at the press conference and the introductions and the filming on the making of, and then also just from the interviews and whatnot, everybody had a really good time. It was a very positive set.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear.
Everybody had fun. Everybody enjoyed themselves, and everybody kind of agreed that this was kind of a crazy idea, but it actually ended up being very entertaining and worked out very well.
Mm-hmm. That's good to hear. So do you think we should, I feel like we're breezing through this, but do you think we should get into the film? Or?
Yeah, I think this would be a good time to dive into the film here.
Alrighty. So our film begins cutting straight into an action sequence where there's a bit of a hostage situation going on.
Mm-hmm.
And our lead protagonist, Genda, the titular rug cop, he comes on in and diffuses this peculiar hostage situation.
Right. And I love it starts off kind of like your typical, oh no, there's a hostage and everybody's outside kind of trying to defuse it from outside.
Yeah. And you've just got the lone detective coming in to take on the situation, take charge of it.
And he's so confident, he literally just strolls in and he's like, I got this.
He's kind of just lackadaisical almost.
He is. And you've been kind of beating around this, but it's so wild. The hostage, or not the hostage, the
voice.
What is the term for the person that's holding people hostage? The kidnapper?
I feel like I should know. I don't think kidnappers are what. I feel like I should know this, but I'm blanking on it completely.
The bad guy, we'll just say the bad guy, is a hand puppet holding a gun, threatening his...
Oh, it's just called the hostage taker. That's lame.
The hostage taker. Okay. We're going to go with the bad guy. I think that sounds a little more basic.
Ventriloquist.
Is a ventriloquist dummy. And he's threatening his puppeteer, and he's threatening the hostages to shoot them. And it's up to our rug cop to take care of this situation.
Mm. And how does he solve this?
I love... So the whole gimmick about the rug cop is this is a detective who solves his cases by using his toupee as a weapon.
Yes, he uses it like Ultra 7's Eye Slugger.
And I love that. There's even like they
use the sound from Ultra 7.
They use the sounds. It's so fun. When I heard the sounds now, you don't hear the sounds the first time, but the second time
he uses it the first time. You do hear it the first time.
Do you?
Yeah, you can hear Ultra. You can literally hear Ultra 7.
I heard it during the second time more prominently.
Because like he even does like the grunt.
He does. He does his own version of that, which Kawasaki very much was open and upfront about. Yes, this is Ultra 7. And I love that. I love the Ultraman influence here. I think that kind of goes to show that, outside of giant monsters and like Pokemon and all that, like Ultraman's influence has reached further.
Cultural impact of Ultraman. I mean,
Yes.
Ultra 7 is also, from what I understand, like the most popular of like the show Ultra shows, like in Japan.
I mean, it did create Pokemon.
It is also just one of the best Ultra shows.
Right. No, the first 3 Ultraman shows are easily some of the most iconic and influential tokusatsu shows of the 60s.
Yeah. Is that including Ultra Q or Return?
I was including Return there solely because of Hideaki Anno and that whole shebang. And so he uses his toupee and he beheads in Ultra 7 fashion the ventriloquist dummy. And he, from here we get an opening montage that's very much like what you would get in like a crime television show.
Right. Giving us a little preview of all our cast members. Mm-hmm. And even our movie's theme song.
Which was co-written by Kawasaki-san and sang by the lead actor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. At one point, they actually did consider to have, I believe it was Hiroshi Fujioka sing it, but they decided against that. Or no, they said they wanted a singer from Hokkaido.
Oh.
That's all they would say is they wanted a singer from Hokkaido to do it. But they opted out and instead had the lead actor, who is also a singer, sing the lead song, the theme.
Not gonna lie, when the theme first played, I was like, this sounds really familiar. And I didn't realize what it reminded me of until later on when they actually play the full theme in the middle of the movie. But I realized it reminds me a lot of like the score from The Princess Blade from Kenji Kawai's score for that movie.
Really?
It's a similar style. Like the dun dun dun, like at the beginning of the song. That it's not quite like the opening theme to Princess Blade. Like I tried listening to a bit of Princess Blade soundtrack, aka the few bits that you can find online. And like it's not like a rip-off of that song. It's not like that one track in Gamera 3 that is just straight up from Legend of the Eight Samurai. Like they definitely sound similar.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought.
See, I just felt like, because I mean, at least in my perspective, from my very uneducated perspective, a lot of like the 1970s and whatnot shows from like your television series all kind of have a similar tone to them.
Mm-hmm.
maybe more so like the end credits songs and not the opening themes. Because like this kind of reminds me of like what I remember from like Kikaida and whatnot, like the ending theme for Kikaida. But it wasn't like a 1-to-1. It definitely felt more like just like a montage,
Right.
or not a montage, a homage to like that era's music.
I mean, either way, I do quite like this song. Actually, it's quite nice.
It's very catchy.
And hey, honestly, the Princess Blade comparison is honestly a good thing, because the music might be the best thing about that film.
I would agree. So during, we get a montage of him like walking around, establishing shots, all your typical like opening montage sequence stuff that you would get in a TV show.
Right.
And then we get our exposition, introduction to the characters, and
we find out that our titular rug cop, he's like one of the best like detectives around, but everyone thinks he's kind of a bit of a weirdo, and that he's being introduced to all these new characters because he's moved to a new precinct.
Which I get what they're going for here, but it also just kind of doesn't make a lot of sense, simply because, I mean, throughout the film, you kind of get the vibe that he's kind of one of the most normal people.
He's literally the most sane person in this group.
Yeah.
Outside of like the assistant girl Tonko and like the chief.
Yeah. And the weirdest thing about him is just how he solves the cases. So I don't really know how that would impact him getting transferred from precinct to precinct. That just, I don't know, that explanation didn't make a lot of sense to me in the context of what we gathered. But
I mean, bear in mind, we did just see him like take down a ventriloquist like doll using his rug as the eye slugger.
But we also,
there are still a couple weird things later as well.
Yeah. But during this whole sequence where we get this exposition, we're introduced to one of our first members of the new office he's at.
Yeah, the best office assistant, Tonko.
Yes, and then from there we get our ensemble cast of detectives
with very straight to the point names.
Yes. First, we're introduced to Shorty, the smallest detective, who's also a world champion in weightlifting. And
they mentioned something about like his height allowing him to have like reduced air resistance, which ends up playing into the climax.
Yeah, he can run faster. He's just more agile than most.
Yeah. We've got Fatty, which is just a big dude who sweats a lot and takes down criminals with his waterfalls of sweat.
He should go to G-Fest. And then we're introduced to our, I would say, main supporting actor. Because he is more prevalent in the film than any other detective. Which is Detective Big Dick, which we don't understand why he gets that name initially. They leave that for a later scene.
And then outside of them, you've got the old man who's so old that even his like actual name, not just his detective name, but his actual name is literally like old man, like Oyaji. That's literally a word used to like old man. And then we've got Detective Handsome, played by
who
Nexus,
woos women with his looks to get them to admit to crimes. And then after this, he meets the chief, and they all welcome him with tea. After they get more tea because the office assistant forgot to get tea for the boss.
But then he ends up spitting his tea out onto her.
And it gets on her, and she's wearing a white shirt, which this is the beginning of the very perverted jokes throughout this film. So the water, of course, anybody who knows this, I think most people would know this. If you wear white and you get white wet, it becomes see-through. Her shirt became see-through.
Anyone over the age of 12.
Hmm?
I feel like anyone over the age of 12 knows.
Probably. And what happens is Detective Big Dick.
Well,
oh boy,
he proves that
that name. So anytime he gets
he doesn't
aroused,
just talk big.
He a part of him grows into.
Well, you're already saying dick, so just say his dick grows.
Well, this is a G-rated show.
Yeah, but you're calling
That's
him.
his name.
Okay,
I'm not going to refer to his. I'm referring to him strictly by his name.
Are you trying to go under the excuse his name is Big Richard?
Nope, I'm just going by the statement his name's Big Dick. A certain body part of him, in relation to his name, grows to a homunculoid size.
Mm-hmm.
Which, fun fact, in the production process, they used a water tube to replace the lightsaber-esque aspect of this body part.
Uh-huh.
And there's a lot of those jokes and visual jokes throughout the film that do kind of make it a little perverted and awkward.
Mm-hmm.
More so than some of Kawasaki's films that make it more as an implied joke. But nonetheless, this occurs, and if I remember correctly, the rug cop gets hit in the face.
I think he does.
And with the force, he falls to the ground. Following this scene, we get kind of a really jarring, out of the blue sequence. We just went from this
to a group of these two cops driving down a road, and they just not cops, nuclear two drivers of a vehicle for a nuclear facility. They're driving down the road, and they just run over a woman on the road.
Right. And the reason they run the woman over is one of them is looking at a
porn magazine.
A porn magazine, and the other's trying to look as well. Now, real quick, I just want to point out how contrasting these two scenes are. The scene in the office at the police station takes place during the day. It's very lighthearted. It's full of jokes. And it's a very just right sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after the whole...
We cut to a visual scene of some girl getting run over.
Yes. And while, yes, okay, there's the sex jokes, still there, that carries over. It goes to a dark sequence with these two people. We went from a room full of people to just two people. It's a very jarring edit.
It just happens so quickly as well. That makes it all the more, as you said, jarring.
And then, the woman gets hit who's just kind of stumbling out, which is also in of itself a jarring moment because we went from,
just saw her whole body get ragdolled and she gets up and is completely fine.
Yeah. Then these evil, villains, so the two guards get out, they look at the woman, which there's an awkward shot that Kawasaki chooses here where the woman who's lying presumably dead in the street, her skirt is just far enough up that you can see a little bit of what she's wearing under, adding to more of the perverted sequences and visual references throughout the film.
Mm-hmm.
This might be based just off of what we've watched. I mean, obviously, there's Earth Defense Widow, which we're not going to talk about Earth Defense Widow here, but Earth Defense Widow does have some very, very, very sensual aspects to it. This might be
a very interesting climax.
Yes.
Pun not intended.
This might be the most sexually charged Kawasaki film we've covered.
I mean, it's not like some of his other films, like Calamari Wrestler, and I think Kaiju Mono didn't have a little bit of that.
Yeah, I mean, Calamari Wrestler had an actual romance sequence and romance subplot.
Oh yeah, didn't they? Did they do it in
Yes.
the with like the actual
Yes.
suit?
But that does make for somewhat of an uncomfortable watch, depending on who you're watching it with and what you're looking for in this film.
I'm gonna be honest, if you're watching Japanese cult films with your parents, you should really stop doing that. Pro tip.
Yeah, there's a lot of awkward stuff in Japanese cult films. But she suddenly gets up, the cops are incarcerated? See, in an interview with one of the actors, they say one of the things they like about the film is that nobody dies in movie. But I mean, the cops definitely, like, one of them gets choked. Like, either they pass out or they do die. It's never clarified.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have somebody who's recording this whole thing, and they take the van and drive off.
Right. And then we cut to Tonko and the detective rug cop just patrolling the streets.
Which we get a little bit of back and forth between them. She has the rug cop stop the car so she can do illegal parking. And then they go to a... What kind of club would this be?
I mean, are we going to ignore the fact that his hair just suddenly grows, and then when she tries to touch it, her hair bites him? His hair bites her?
Yeah, so...
Are we going to ignore that?
I mean, I didn't even really think about it, if I'm going to be honest. But yeah, no, his hair, when he gets out of the car, turns into an afro. And he says that it might be due to the humidity that it does this. And then, yeah, with some pretty shoddy CG, it bites her finger.
No, it's a fun effect. I dig it.
It is fun.
But then they get a radio that shots have been fired at like a nearby hostess club,
which they go to. And while they're there, they find out that a guy who's obsessed with one of the hostess decides to go crazy when she tells him that she will not marry him.
Mm-hmm.
Which we get all this in a backstory when they're up on the rooftop trying to calm him down. This is where we find out that it's because he's bald. And then, the rug cop pulls the, well, I'm bald too card, and then uses his toupee to eye slugger him to make him lose his weapon. And then he falls to the ground and cries a lot and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. And this is sort of our first bit of setup for, some of the backstory behind our titular character.
Right, because following this scene, don't we get the bar sequence between Detective Big Dick and
yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where he explains a bit of the rug cop's backstory to Tonko about how he proposed to his girlfriend at the time, Yoko, but when she accidentally dropped the ring, and they both went to pick it up. His wig fell off, revealing that he actually has a largely bald head of hair.
Yeah, which following this, she tells him that because he's bald, she won't marry him. Which this movie is really racist against bald people. Like, it's almost like in this film they like set it up as like if you're bald, then like your life is over. I'm like, man, like anybody who is bald, like this is a tough movie. Like they do not pull their punches. They go right for the jugular every single time. But
if anything, it's just showing how like how just not nice some of these people are. It's really hard not to swear, I must say, as an Australian. It's very hard sometimes.
But I think we also need to address the fact that while the rug cop is definitely 40s or 50s, his girlfriend in this sequence is clearly in her 20s, which at the time of filming, the actress was 23.
Mm-hmm.
which is a little, weird.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I digress.
Yeah. It's not the worst age gap I've seen, especially not in like a Japanese movie.
And it's not the weirdest love story that Kawasaki has done that we've covered.
That's true. Kawasaki is big on weird love stories, isn't he?
At least he's not like the director of Stacy.
That's true, but that's a very low bar. Literally.
Now, yeah. Now, following this, we get the full song with Japanese subtitles underneath.
After
that you
a training
can sing.
montage.
Yeah, we get the whole training montage of him learning how to correctly toss his toupee as a weapon, in kind of like a Rocky style like training montage, and then we get the musical number, which we get the full song, and it is a very catchy song. And
it's very catchy, but I think this kind of like slideshow of images kind of goes on a little too long.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds to a minute too long because it's a 3-minute song.
Yeah, it's a full song. It's kind of like the scene in Godzilla vs. McGodzilla, where it just isn't a bit too long.
And there's just not a lot going on, right? Like
there's nothing going on.
It's just kind of walking and just padding the runtime essentially.
Yeah.
It's not even like they're setting up the next part of the story.
No, we're just seeing the Rob Cop walk and various photos of him. That's about it.
Right. In a way, the way I always viewed it was kind of like, okay, so this first part was the opening sequence with the ventriloquist dummy was like the hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then we had our opening titles. Then we had the episode, which if you look at how long that first part is, it's probably 20 minutes, 25,
about 30-ish minutes in.
Yeah. So it's the end credits song. Like it's the end of episode 1 because it is trying to pay homage to TV shows. I kind of viewed it as the first story, the first episode is over, and then we go into the next episode, which is what...
it wouldn't surprise me if some of the detective shows around this time also would have had montages like this in the middle of the episodes. Especially some of the ones that are more like 40 minutes.
Right. Because after this montage, they do go into the big conflict of our story, which is the payoff of the whole hit and run and whatnot sequence.
Right. Because antagonists send the video they filmed, to the police.
Which then our characters watch.
They start, noticing a few details, they see the face of the guy recording the video, and Detective Big Dick recognizes him as someone who was on a list of extremists. But then we're also introduced to a subplot involving Takumi Saito.
Which, this subplot kind of, it's just there for a gag.
Yeah, it doesn't end up adding much at all by the end of it. I was waiting for okay, when in the climax is Takumi Sato gonna show up?
Mm-hmm.
And then he shows up right when the climax ends.
Right, which it does turn into a funny joke.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in a way you could kind of read it as, okay, so his character is supposed to be higher up government detective agency stuff.
It's always that higher ups that are taking the case away from the police, that blocking them from being able to get to get properly on the case.
Right.
To work. That's just holding them back while they're trying to work.
But maybe you could interpret that as okay, the government is super slow and they're always late to getting these solved. It's up to the little people to actually get things done. You could interpret it that way if you want to.
Yeah. That's something that would definitely be relevant to Japan, but also I feel like that is kind of something that just in general kind of appears in like media across the world a bit in like detective dramas, because this is kind of just a general trope
right
of the genre.
Yeah, it's supposed to add a conflict to the main characters, because now they have to go through back channels and work in the shadows to get the answer to their solution, which is what happens in the following scene when Tonko and Detective Big Dick and the Rug Cop all use a computer to do research on the individual who was filming this mysterious video.
But eventually, after the higher-ups leave, our characters determine that the guy filming the video is a high school teacher by the name Tetsuo Hebinuma, physics teacher at a high school in Tokyo. So they eventually, the logical next step would be to go visit the high school and ask questions surrounding the guy, which they do. And this eventually leads them to one of the professor's students, a character named Yoko,
who oddly looks just like the Rug Cop's ex-lover.
She might just even be played by the same actress.
Dun dun dun. And the Rug Cop initially questions, like, "Are you this person?" She's like, "No." And then they go about their typical questioning on the teacher and whatnot.
Right. They get a tip from her about like some page in the book that made references to like uranium-235, which is a material that they already have associated with the case, as well as like a clue, hot lip, which they don't quite understand what that means, but they take note of it and all that sort of deal.
Which then, following this, correct me if I'm wrong, but they then return back to the police station where they get a call, right?
Yeah, they're back at the police station. Mr. Handsome is dressed exactly like his character in Ultraman Nexus. And we just kind of get some exposition for what the antagonists are likely planning.
Right, and then we get the infamous call of like, oh, the villains are calling.
The villain is calling specifically for the one detective who's our protagonist.
Now, during this sequence, the chief, I believe, tells the Rug Cop to stretch the call.
Oh yeah, and then he just stretches the phone line.
And I don't know why, because this is such a stupid joke. But it actually got me.
Because it's a decent joke.
Because then he's like, "I mean the call, keep talking." And what's funny is when he says stretch the call, he starts stretching the phone and he stops talking. Like he's literally not talking. And that's why they end up hanging up, because he's just standing there listening and being silent. And it's actually funny. Oh my god. But they fail to trace the call. And honestly, at this point, I was still laughing that I kind of forgot what's going on.
That's funny. Basically, during this scene, our antagonist, who's going by the name Hades, from Greek mythology, or Hades, sorry.
I was about to say, what?
Yeah.
Hades?
Sorry, Hades. My bad.
We talking about some sort of, like, group called the Hotties?
No. I was thinking about it like it was a Japanese name, but then I remembered, no, it's Hades from Greek mythology.
Yeah. They both reference Hades and Prometheus, which are mythological. One's a god, one is a demigod, which is Prometheus, that brought fire to Earth, and he got cast out, and Hades is the god of the underworld in Greek mythology.
Yeah. The characters had previously determined that this terrorist group was stealing nuclear materials likely to create nuclear bombs, which is what Hades confirms to them. And Hades even tells them the location and time of the first bomb, they try to investigate this bomb, going to the location, trying to scout out any boats, and like they're at this dock and they scout out for any boats that might be in the sea. They spot one girl on a boat, try to warn her, but then it explodes.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is when the government agency randomly shows up again and is like, this is not your case, you can't be on here. But they don't do anything. They just say that.
Yeah.
Like, it's obvious they want to include them as like a kink in the machine to like cause an issue, but all they do is they say, stop, don't do that. Like slapping their wrists and moving away.
Yeah, and then they don't show up again until the very end of the film.
So, what does our characters do? They ignore what was said.
But hey, at least the rug cop got an early prostate exam.
That's right, because following this, don't we get our backstory on how he became himself?
Wait, what? No. There's just a joke line where he's like, they even inspected my ass.
Oh, that's right.
But no, this scene is where they get sent another video from the terrorist group.
That's right. And this one, correct me if I'm wrong, this is where they give them their ultimatum of, you either do this or we're going to blow up this atomic bomb.
Give us 5 billion yen. We'll contact you with instructions later.
And then we get a little gag with a sneeze at the end and whatnot.
Yeah.
In your typical comedic fashion, which is, it is what it is.
It's fine. I didn't find this joke all that funny. I think it kind of goes on a little too long, but it's a fine joke.
It is like legitimately. I'm just like when that stuff like that happens, I'm just like, it is what it is. Okay. So admittedly, my next note is whenever they are in the evil villain's lair. So I'm kind of lost here.
They kind of stumped on what to do next, but eventually Mr. Handsome sort of determines where the video was sent from, and they go like asking the locals about like the physics teacher. And they don't really end up finding anything. But then they notice a love hotel with a neon sign. The Hotel Tulip. But some of the letters aren't lit up, so it says hot lip. Just like the phrase written in one of the notes that one of the pieces of evidence that Yoko gave him earlier.
It's all connected.
And they investigate and find that this is the secret underground base of the terrorist group. They referring to the rug cop and Detective Big Dick.
Which they do a little bit of, sneaking around, following one of the guards, thinking they're being sneaky, only to find out that they were aware of their presence there the whole time due to cameras and lasers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And they're about to get shot by one of the main villains. And this is where we get our first actual instance of the detectives working together, like with their powers. So the rug cop uses his toupee to unbutton and remove the shirt of the villainous character trying to shoot them. That arouses Detective Big Dick, and he uses his lightsaber to defeat the three guards, which is, I think that's a really fun thing, how they're able to interact and use their powers together to fight. I think that's something that's really fun to see these characters do.
Right. But unfortunately, before they can make any arrests proper, the teacher comes out holding Yoko at gunpoint.
Yes. Which creates more tension, and now it's up to the rug cop and Detective Big Dick to lower their weapons.
Including the hair.
And they get
tied up. But then the hair starts moving on its own.
Now, keep in mind, all of this was kind of done at night. At least that's kind of the way it looks, right? Like this is kind of in the evening.
Right. I mean, they have like 24 hours, roughly, till the bomb goes off.
Yeah.
And this whole climax actually would occur over a 24-hour period.
Yeah. So the following morning,
I guess,
we're back at the police station. They're unable to reach the detective Rug Cop or Big Dick. And so they need to, they're confused on what to do. This is when a cameo by, I guess, he's a political activist and just kind of like a public figure, shows up and does a debrief. Also, during this whole thing, there's an advertisement for the toupee itself.
Right.
He shows up and he explains how the Rug Cop became the Rug Cop, which is this fun little like backstory on how he came to the doctor and he wished to help in figuring out how to create this toupee. And during the science experiments, they figured out what to do, but the side effect was the hair became self-aware.
Yeah. And Tonko gets the idea that, since the hair got back to the police station and it's kind of its own living being, maybe she can use this to find Detective Rug Cop. So then she puts the hair on a leash.
And then just starts walking with the hair to locate where they're at.
It's just a puppy.
Which, it works. They end up, she ends up getting to the hotel.
Right. But before this, it is, it's revealed that Yoko is actually the villain of the story.
And this is also where we learned that Yoko is actually the child to the Rug Cop.
Yes. And he determined that she was a villain purely because, when she gave them the tip earlier in the film, the page number she mentioned for, the note that she found, the pages that they were in between, it's impossible for it to be that because the page numbers she mentioned are the same sheet, which is an incredibly convoluted way to determine that. But you know what? I accept it.
Honestly, if that's the most convoluted and crazy thing in this story, I think there would have been a problem. But no, the whole child-father thing was actually kind of a surprise twist, which I was very happy about.
I knew, obviously, from the scene she was introduced that she was going to be his daughter. I thought that was obvious, but the twist villain bit actually did kind of surprise me a little bit. I'm like, oh.
Mm-hmm. And, I really like following this, so we get some backstory on what happened after they broke up. She got with another guy. She was never truly happy. She became an alcoholic and died. She hated her mother, and she had only heard good things about him. And then,
right, the mother regretted dumping him.
And then Detective Big Dick goes on this whole story on how she should be appreciative because of how much her mother went through. And I love the visual thing where Kawasaki turns out all the lights and then puts a spotlight on him. That's just a funny little gag that I think is just really cool.
Right. We also get a Den Ace reference in this scene.
Yes. Oh, yes. So the whole ploy for the 5 billion yen is based on a horse race. And so the villains have purchased tickets to get money if a certain horse wins, which the amount totals to 5 billion yen. So the request is that Den Ace, the racehorse, wins, and that horse has a zero winning streak.
Record. So the bets are so the bets for him winning very rewarding if he does win.
Yes. So I love that. You know, one of the things in Kawasaki's films is you always get a Den Ace reference because Den Ace is Kawasaki's like child.
And then you usually get a Kawasaki cameo as well.
Yes.
Which I think he appeared in the commercial for the hair.
I think you're correct in that, yes.
Because I saw it. I was pretty sure that was him.
So, you know, in the world sinks except Japan, Den Ace appeared in that advertisement for the television show.
Right. Once the seafood he's on a shirt.
He's on a shirt. Kaiju Mono. Trying to remember. Don't they name drop Den Ace?
They might have. I really don't remember.
I don't remember. And then I don't remember if Calamari Wrestler had anything. But nonetheless, it's one of those things where it's almost like a Stan Lee cameo in Marvel movies. Where Kawasaki will either appear or Den Ace will be mentioned or appear in some fashion, or both. So this is our little show of Den Ace. And you know, from here, we get their dastardly plan. They're listening to the horse race, and
they win.
Den Ace does win. Meanwhile, Tonko and the toupee make it into the hotel, and they're able to get to the Rogue Cop and Detective Big Dick, and are able to free them using their powers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which this leads into a pretty fun final fight, really.
Yeah. All the other detectives show up, and they all use, like you said, their various traits to defeat all the henchmen.
Mm-hmm. And I like this whole sequence. I had a lot of fun with seeing like Fatty using his sweat and whatnot. Detective Handsome uses his looks to subdue the other female villain. Yeah, literally, it's the power of Riz. It's just, it's a lot of fun. We get to see all the characters intertwining and using their powers to win the day. And then it kind of concludes, the story mainly concludes with the daughter agreeing to help disarm the bomb because the bomb is now in a countdown.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was due to a malfunction with the remote that got pressed.
Right. Oh, I mean, she also does try using just like a laser gun on him.
Yeah.
But then his forehead deflects it.
Yeah. So then we get to the countdown, you know, the counting down clock cliche. They have so much amount of time before the bomb goes off. They're all there. There's a little gag where she gets a call by one of her friends, and they're all like, "What are you doing?" And she's just chit-chatting, which I thought was kind of a lame joke. Out of all of Kawasaki's films, I do think this has some of the more lamer jokes. But I also think this film clearly is trying to be more of a comedy than some of the others that are also trying to be comedies but just don't land. So it's, you know, it's kind of like this back and forth of like, okay, the Rug Cop is more of a comedy, but the jokes aren't funny, but at least you can tell they're trying to be funny, unlike some films where they're just outlandish.
I don't know, I felt the comedy in this was like a bit less try hard. Or I feel like sometimes Kawasaki movies kind of overdo the comedy a little bit.
Yes, especially like in Kaiju Mono.
Yeah. Whereas this, it's got that there's that craziness, there's that excessive, I'm looking for a word, but I'm blanking on it.
Outrageous insanity,
eccentricism to like Kawasaki movies. Like it's there here, but it's not overt as in like Kaiju Mono or Mono. Sorry.
Right.
or like some of his other.
It blends.
Yeah,
it blends in very well.
Which I prefer because I'm not a big fan of like going too super like over the top with the comedy in films. I'm not a big comedy movie guy, so when you kind of overdo it, it just doesn't land with me at all, kind of.
Right. See, comedy is one of the few genres where I think I just don't really, I don't know. They just, all the comedies I've watched, they're, for the most part, they're just like, okay, I sat and I watched a movie.
Right. I'm not
a
a big comedy film fan either. For me, I kind of have to be in a certain mood sometimes.
Right.
And like sometimes I have to be around the right people. But there are some comedies that I do still really, really enjoy. Like I think like RoboCop and Starship Troopers are absolutely hilarious films. But Monty Python and the Holy Grail as well is another great comedy that I love, but it's not one of my favorite genres.
See, so it's interesting. So if we're talking comedies, you know, like sitcoms for me are a different story. Like I like a good sitcom. I'll watch a good sitcom. Alf is my favorite television show, period. But if we talk movies, when I think of comedies, the first two movies that come to mind that I actually like is Clue, the movie. I thoroughly enjoy that movie. I laugh at that movie a lot too. And that's one that I find myself quoting a lot. And then like another comedy that I really, really like is 1981's Arthur with Dudley Moore in it. Both of those are like comedies that I will, like, no matter what, like when I watch them, I will laugh. They will get me to break. But what's interesting is, you know, watching Kawasaki's films specifically, you know, like Monster Seafood Wars, I can get enjoyment out of the comedy in there. The Rug Cop, not the Rug Cop, Calamari Wrestler, I enjoy. The World Sinks Except Japan, I think, is a very smart and clever movie with its writing and whatnot. And the other films that he's done, like some of the comedy, I think is enjoyable, and like I enjoy most of his movies. I enjoy them.
Right. For me, I find the comedy can be very hit or miss for me.
Yeah. And I think like an example of where comedy in the tokusatsu genre doesn't land for me is very much in like Death Kappa. I don't think it lands very well in Death Kappa at all.
I think for me, comedy works better in like when I'm attached to the when I'm invested in characters, and it's like that kind of like the running gags with the characters, or it's like just banter between them. Because I love Kamen Rider Fies just for like the how absolutely hilarious the banter between like the main Kamen Rider and his two main friends are. Like whenever they're sitting at the dinner table, I think any scene with them together is absolutely hilarious, and I love it. And then like the Always Sunset trilogy as well. I think those movies are absolutely hilarious. The comedy in those is brilliant. I love Shinichi Satsumi's character in all three of those films.
Yeah. And I think I would agree with that. Like, you know, like as an example in this film, whenever we have the stretch the call, like they do a good job at making you at least interested in the Rug Cop. So like that moment, like that's the one moment in the film where he has, I would say, his moment of comedy. Yeah. And it works.
Yeah.
That is the one time where he's like the dumb character or the crazy character or outrageous character.
Right. I mean, to be fair, his hair is a bit crazy.
Yeah, but you know, I think at least in context for like you and me, like when we see that, we see Ultra 7. So for us, it's not, I mean, it's outrageous, it's outlandish, but it's familiar.
Right. I suppose that is true, yeah.
And so, like that moment there with stretching the call got me really good. That is easily the film's best joke. And it's from the character that's the least outlandish. It's when you break down the concept of comedy, most of it comes down to it's either the straight person doing something crazy or it's the crazy person and the straight person's reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Like in our dynamic, I say a lot of crazy stuff and then your reaction to that, I would say, is sometimes the comedy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or maybe it's just what I say that's funny because you don't know what I'm going to say.
I mean, that's kind of the fun of banter is just just building upon each. I don't know if I want to say bit of dialogue when we're referring to our own conversations, but yeah, just building off what each other's saying,
right?
Going from there.
Yeah, but in like the Rug Cop's case, what Kawasaki chooses to do is situational irony.
Yeah. Kawasaki's films are typically very situational comedy based.
Mm-hmm. Which the problem with situational is if you can't relate in some fashion, it goes over your head or it doesn't land.
Right. Which
I think is the issue with a lot of his films is they're so crazy that it's like, okay, that happened. Cool. I think The Rug Cop is the biggest glaring example of like situational moments that don't land as funny.
I mean, I think there's some okay moments. Like I think like the hostage situation at the beginning is a pretty decent gag.
Yes.
Like that's a familiar situation you see in detective movies, but with like a simple but bizarre twist, which is probably why it's kind of like the most famous scene in the film. Like it's the one that like whenever like you see people talking about the film, as few and far between as seeing people talk about this film is. That's kind of the one scene that always comes up. Is that opening scene.
Right. But I think that is still that's a good example of a situation of situational irony that does land. But then like the villain's second recording where, the sneeze happens, it's like, okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like that didn't land. To me, that's a little more blaring than some of the problems in like Kaiju Mono or Monster Seafood Wars. But I still don't think I still think The Rug Cop has funnier, more entertaining moments.
I just think the Rug Cop was in general more engaging than both of those films. Like I would never say I was actively. I would never say there was any point where I was actually bored by the film. Whereas like Kaiju Mono, especially, I felt was a drag.
Yeah, I would agree. What's interesting is, so when I went back, and because spoiler alert, when we do our ranking, we're going to also include what we ranked last year.
Mm-hmm. I have to remember which order I did for Kaiju Mono and Monster Seafood Wars, but I'm pretty sure I do remember.
Well, so while I was going back and listening to our last episode, which was Monster Seafood Wars, to figure out exactly where my ranking stood, I found a quote that I said that I think very much stands still.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I said was Kawasaki's weakest films are his kaiju films. And I think The Rug Cop is a great example of that.
Yeah, that's very true. I remember us bringing that up. And this is definitely one of his better films. Spoilers a little bit for the rankings.
And I think, there is heart in this movie. There's entertainment. There's funny moments. There's a lot of good stuff in this film. And it also just stands out because of the concept, I think, in this film. It doesn't fall in line with Kawasaki's kaiju movies. It doesn't fall in line with his henshin stuff. And it doesn't fall in line with his weird animal stories, like President Tanuki, Kabuto Beetle, or the Calamari Wrestler. This is, at its core, not even just at its core in general, this is a film about people with not that out of this world powers. One's really short, so he's fast. One's really fat, so he sweats a lot. One's really hot, so he has the riz of a god. One man has a special toupee. One man has a giant body part.
Right.
They're not really they're outrageous concepts, but on a believable level. This is Kawasaki's, from what we've covered at least, this is Kawasaki's most down-to-earth story. And in many ways, I'd say it has some of the best comedy. And it does go back to that relatability that, I can see that situation occurring. That's funny. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about The Rug Cop, is its relatability, is its down-to-earth storytelling, and its concepts. Before I watched the movie, I was on a call with my friends from MWA, and Eric was like, well, what's The Rug Cop? So I just showed him the animated DVD menu, which has clips from the movie, and he was cracking up at these outrageous concepts. Like walking a toupee like a dog, throwing a toupee like the eye slugger. Like, those ideas aren't entirely out of the question in the real world, right? They're just not gonna happen. But they're more believable than a wrestler turning into a squid, making love to his ex-lover, and fighting an octopus.
Okay, but the scene where the calamari wrestler gets jumped by like the third guy is absolutely hilarious. The Squilla, I think it was.
Yeah.
That's like actually the best joke in any of these movies.
But I thoroughly think that this film does cover those comedic elements fairly well.
Mm-hmm. But with that being said, do you think we should perhaps transition to our ranking?
Well, I mean, there's still a little bit left in the film we haven't covered.
Oh, that's true. I almost forgot.
Yeah, because, after the whole disarmament of the bomb, the daughter does get arrested, but she says, well, she's not really going to get arrested because she's a minor. Which, then once you consider it's played by the same actress who is also his lover, it suddenly becomes even more creepy. But I digress.
Yeah, especially given the weird music when they first meet.
Yeah. And then he says, once you're out of juvie and whatnot, come see me and we'll, start a life and whatnot.
Takumi Saito shows up finally, just to be shamed for being useless.
Yeah. And what's funny is Detective Big Dick straight up tells him it's like,
you got shown up, bro.
Yeah. Which is really, I thought that was really funny to just be like straight up like, yeah, you're late to the game. It's already done.
I think just having it be Takumi Saito makes it all the funnier to me. I don't know why. I just find it really funny that he's in this movie.
And then we get a conclusion back at the office. Another sex joke is made. This film loves its sex jokes.
Yeah, with Tonko getting some hair extensions, and this turns on the Rug Cop's rug.
Yeah. And then after this, we get a group photo with the caption, "To be continued."
Yes.
Which is one of the...
in fact, a sequel to this movie.
Yes. Which makes this one of the rare occasions where a sequel was made for a Kawasaki film.
Mm-hmm.
Which I guess this is a perfect segue to briefly talk about the sequel. So the sequel, they wanted to make a movie, but the movie never happened. However, a TV show was made called Detective Zura, The Biggest Decisive Battle Over Our Head.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
see, I wasn't entirely sure if it was a movie, or if it was a TV movie or an actual TV show. It the way very poor machine translations were making it sounded like it could have been either. I wasn't entirely sure.
So they talk about in the introduction about the TV series. So they do make it very clear it was a television show and that stuff. It started airing October of 2007, and I want to say it lasted for like a couple months. The show takes place 3 years later at the same station, where they take on incidents going on. There was an increased budget, so there was actually better special effects in the show than the movie. Minoru Kawasaki came back to do it. I mean, he got story credit. He also did the script and wrote it. It was inspired by the television show Bayside Shakedown, which aired on Fuji TV from January 7th to March 18th of 1997. And many of the crew members did return. However, one of them who did not return was Detective Big Dick due to the obvious issues with his character being on television.
I think, from what I understand, Tonko also did not return.
Yes.
But she was replaced by like another idol, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple, even if I'm not mistaken.
Which I'd love to see what this television show did. I'd love to see what they did.
Apparently, it's one of the last roles of Yusuke Kirishima before he retired. Detective Hansen.
Yeah.
And also, I know that the doctor character also returns, and apparently at one point, like the director asked him if he read the script, and on set he just replied, "I haven't read this at all." And yeah, that's about all I had on it.
Yeah, I got the cast members and whatnot, but we'll talk about that once we.
I was struggling to even figure out who was in it outside of like a couple names.
I found a whole list, but I figured since we weren't covering that, I didn't get the whole list, but I did pull from the cast and crew of this film, who was in it. So before we get off onto our rankings. Do you have any final thoughts, Rex? Anything you haven't mentioned yet?
I don't know. I think I had a good time with this film. I don't tend to always. I guess you'd never really quite know what to expect from Kawasaki films, particularly this one, where I didn't quite understand what the title meant by the rug cop. I didn't realize that was referring to a wig that he was wearing. But no, I was pleasantly surprised by the fact that I actually had a decently fun time watching this film.
See, the only thing I have left really to say is this might be his most cohesive film in terms of the writing.
Yeah, I feel like this is his most engaging film, and also from what I can recall, bear in mind, don't have the clearest memory of all his films, but probably one of the better looking films he's directed that I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
It's definitely better looking than Monster Seafood Wars, which I was not a fan of the look of that film at all.
Right, that one felt cheap.
Yeah, and even Calamari Wrestler, I feel like it was just a bit too much of the dull color grading for the type of film it was going for, the type of tone it was going for, I should say.
Right. I would venture to say that this is up there. And keep in mind, this film came out September 16th of 2006. It looks pretty on par with how a professional film would look at a low budget at that time. Much like how Kaiju Mono looked like a professional film that would come out in 2016 with a low budget.
Right. It's a solid looking low budget film, I'd say.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But yeah, outside of that, I'd say it's about time to move on to the rankings.
Well, the last thing I do want to bring up is based off of what I read, it actually did very well. At its
really?
premiere, there were double the people that could fit in the theater.
Wow.
There. And it did very well, which is partially why it garnished a sequel television show and got a bigger budget. It actually, when it aired on TV, it got a major drama time spots.
Oh wow!
So it got a lot of airtime. So it turned out to be, I would argue, this is probably one of Kawasaki's biggest, highest performing films.
Mm-hmm.
But with that, I do think it is time to do our ranking. Rex, we're gonna do this much like how we did the Kawasaki month last year, where one of us will just give our entire ranking, and then the other person will go. So, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so my ranking. Well, at number 5, I guess it would be now. I'm gonna have to go with Monster Seafood Wars. I just did not enjoy that film very much. I thought it was a slog. I didn't get all that much out of the kaiju action. A lot of the poor green screen really didn't help matters with that, and yeah, I just did not find myself engaged with very much of anything in that film.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, Kaiju Mono.
You mean 4?
Same. Huh? Oh, silly me. Number 4, Kaiju Mono. Same sort of deal, not all that engaging. But then after that, I'd say probably The World Sinks Except Japan at number 3. That was actually World Sinks Except Japan was like a legitimate, little decently nice surprise for me. I didn't love it, but it was honestly a bit better than I was expecting. And then at number 2, I think I'm going to go with The Calamari Wrestler and put The Rug Cop at number 1.
Really?
I think so. The Rug Cop just had me consistently engaged from start to finish, whereas I do think Calamari Wrestler did kind of drag in parts. And I feel that all of Kawasaki's other films, I feel like all of his films that I've seen do drag a little. I think The Rug Cop, it's a pretty paper thin plot, all things considered, but it's still I'd say it's still consistently entertaining. The only one moment that I think should really be shortened is cut maybe 30 seconds to a minute out of the song. But outside of that, I was quite engaged with it overall, and I quite enjoyed The Rug Cop.
Okay.
So how about you?
So my ranking, starting off at number 5, would be Kaiju Mono. I remember I said that the film was just kind of this glorified fan service cameo thing, where it was just references to Ultraman and whatnot left and right,
and female prisoner Scorpion.
And the film is easily his most professional looking, but the script is easily one of his worst.
Mm-hmm.
The comedy does not land, and the whole wrestling aspect is just kind of blah to me.
Right.
At number 4, I have Monster Seafood Wars. The only reason it beats Kaiju Mono is I love Jumbo Chef. I love the references. I think the references in Monster Seafood Wars are better than in Kaiju Mono, but it does look kind of it looks pretty bland. It's not the best looking. At number 3, which is where we would get into this is good. You do have The Calamari Wrestler, which I think is a very fun film, but if I remember correctly, the romance plot is pretty convoluted and at the end doesn't make the most sense.
Right.
So that film has
have Squilla.
It does. It's just that film has the most it suffers the most on a narrative level.
Mm-hmm.
At number 2, we have The Rug Cop. I think this is Kawasaki's most cohesive film. I think it's a lot of fun and it's enjoyable. But I do think this film is more of your pure entertainment, which there's nothing wrong with pure entertainment. It's fun. That's what it should be. But the film that does have my number one spot is a lot more vocal and has a lot more to say, which I appreciate in a film when there's more thought put in. And that is why at number one still sits The World Sinks Except Japan, which is a great parody of Submersion of Japan and also still has a very interesting commentary on racism and segregation, which I think is one of the best things.
Specifically in Japan.
Specifically in Japan, yes. Which I think is, first of all, that's kind of abnormal for a Kawasaki film to be that politically charged, but it's also really cool, and I love that about it.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, Rex, do you want to transition this over into our casting crew?
Sure. I'm sure you're looking forward to this.
Okay. So, full disclaimer, the Minoru Kawasaki one, I just kind of did his most known.
It's Minoru Kawasaki.
Like, everything
We've already
he's
talked
done.
about like most of his films.
So, as your writer and director, you have Minoru Kawasaki. Your screenplay was by Takeo Nakano, who did Inugami, Kabuto Beetle, Silver Mask, Ultraman Ginga S, Ultraman Ginga S the movie, Ultraman X the movie, Kaiju Mono, Ultraman Orb the movie, Ultraman Rube the movie, Ultraman Taiga the movie, Ultraman Z, Ultraman Decker, and Ultraman Blazar. Your producer was Akio Jisoji, who was a writer on Ultra Q and Ultraman Taro, who was a director.
Also Kawasaki's mentor.
Yes. Who was also a director on Ultraman, Ultra 7, Operation Mystery, The Return of Ultraman, Silver Mask, Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman Dyna, Ultra Q Dark Fantasy, Ultraman Max, Ultra Q the movie, Silver Mask, the 2000s movie remake, 10 Nights of Dreams, his last credit as director. He also served as producer on Mikadroid, Robokill Underneath Disco Club Layla, The Calamari Wrestler, The World Sinks Except Japan, and this would be his last collaboration with Minoru Kawasaki before his passing.
You know, interestingly enough, I actually realized that Silver Mask was actually a compilation movie.
Really?
Yeah, because it's actually like a 3-episode TV show. Jisoji directed the first episode. It was either Kawasaki or Nakano who wrote the first and the third episode.
Huh.
I don't remember which one it was.
Interesting.
But yeah.
Moving on with your crew, you have Masako Ishii, who is your composer, who also composed The Calamari Wrestler, Kabuto Beetle, Executive Koala, Goalkeeper Crab, The World Sinks Except Japan, Ancient Girl Team Dragon V, which is a series, and Ancient Girl Dogshan, which is another series. Moving on to your cast, Moto Fuyuki, who played Hatsuo Genda, was also in Zura Detective, The Biggest Battle Above, the sequel television show, Earth Defense Girl Iko-chan, Kaiju Mono, Earth Defense Widow, and most recently in President Tanuki. Ijiri Okada, who played Detective Big Dick, was also in The World Sinks Except Japan, Space Sheriff Gavin the movie, Super Legend God Hikoza, and Garo Maki no Hana.
Oh, he was in that too? Oh.
He was.
So there's more than one director here. Huh. Detective
Patty was played by Uganda Tiger, who's also known as his real name, Shinichiro Sato, who was in Ultraman Tiga. Nabaya Khan, who played Kanichi Nabiya, was in The Return of Godzilla, Kabuto Beetle, Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit, Goemon, Death Kappa, Earth Defense Widow, Kaiju Mono, Den Ace Chaos, the upcoming compilation movie, Den Ace Cake, and Dene's Wedding. He also worked on bonus footage for Godzilla Final Wars.
Ooh.
Michihiko Hamada, who played Old Man, was in Detective Zura, The Biggest Battle Above Your Head, the sequel show, and one of the Heisei Ultraman or Ultra 7 episodes. Yusuke Kirishima, who played Detective Handsome, was in Ultra Q Dark Fantasy, Ultraman Nexus, and Detective Zira, The Biggest Battle Above. Mai Hashimoto, who played Tonko Yoshiko, didn't have any tokusatsu or kaiju credits. Hideo Nakano, who played the Chief, was in Slit-Mouthed Woman 2, Zebraman 2, Attack on Zebra City, and the zombie movie Z Island. Takumi Saito, who played Detective Hata, was in Garo, Kabuto Beetle, Frankenstein Girl vs. Vampire Girl, 20th Century Boys The Final Chapter, Robo Geisha, Space Battleship Yamato, Hell Driver, Shin Godzilla, Meatball Machine Kaduko, Cube, the 2021 Japanese remake, Shin Ultraman, Shin Kamen Rider, Brush of the God, and the Denes movie The Secret of the Handkerchief Prince. Masami Horuchi, who played Tetsuya Janyuma, was in Ultraman 80, Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman Dyna, Ultraman Gaia, Ultraman Nexus, Ultra Q Dark Fantasy, Ultraman Max, Ultra 7X, Neo Ultra Q, Ultraman Decker, the Akira Kurosawa film Stray Dog, Ultra Q the movie, Ultraman Mebius and Ultra Brothers, Shin Ultraman, Kabuto Beetle, Silver Mask, Monster X Strikes Back, Attack the G8 Summit, Kaiju Mono, Monster Seafood War, Earth Defense Widow, and was in the stage play for Kamen Rider Drive, the final stage play. And finally, Hiromi Iguchi, who played Ryoko and Yoko, was in Ultraman Max, Detective Zura, The Biggest Battle Above, Cutie Honey the Live, Garo Makai Senki, Garo Make no Hana, Garo Make...
Makai Senki, Makai no Hana, Makai Retsuden.
Super Caesar Fight, Star Warriors, Garo Red Requiem, and A New Legend of the Stardust Brothers. Oh, boy. That was a lot.
It was. It was quite a bit.
So, with that, I mean, we've covered the cast and the crew, we've done our ranking, we've talked about the film, we've talked about its reception and the stuff that came after, we talked about pre-production.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've hit all the marks on our recording.
Well, I feel like there's one last thing that we're missing.
You're right.
Any idea?
The most noblest of podcasting traditions.
What could it be?
Well, let me attempt at what I think it could be for you, okay?
Oh?
Hello. I'm Elijah, and I have a kaiju and tokusatsu problem. Joking aside, I am Elijah Thomas. I am part of the rotating hosts for Monsters with Attitude. You can check us out on YouTube, where we do monthly live streams talking kaiju entertainment. You can also head over to Facebook and join our Facebook group. It's a great place to talk with like-minded people. I'm also a writer. I've written for GodzillaMovies.com and in Kaiju Ramen Magazine. Currently, I write for Kaiju United. My most recent article is an interview with Donnie Winter about his forum days and his YouTube channel. Donnie Winter actually is now an official Godzilla writer, as he was one of the writers for the upcoming comic IDW's Godzilla 70th Anniversary one-shot.
Hey, that's sick.
My writing has also been featured in the book Giant Bug Cinema, a Monster Kid's Guide from Bear Manor Media, where I wrote about Ghidra, the three-headed monster. I am also a filmmaker and YouTuber. You can check out my stuff on my YouTube channel, ET13 Productions, where you can see some of my short films and my older YouTube videos, along with a playlist that features all of my appearances on YouTube. I do plan on getting some new videos out soon, and my short films, so definitely check that out. This is where I don't have a script yet, but as I mentioned at the top of the show, I also contributed an audio commentary and bonus features for SRS Cinema's release of Yuzo, The Biggest Battle in Tokyo. So definitely check that out on srscinema.com, where you can order the Blu-ray. I also helped license the character Yongori for Titanic Creations. So definitely keep an eye out for news and updates about that. Pre-orders go live in April, which by the time this recording comes out, it will be April. So stay tuned for that announcement on their social medias or on their website. I also appeared in a kaiju movie, little-known film called Zillafoot from 2021. I made a brief cameo in the film as Skywatcher number 2. It's got a rating of 3.7 out of 10 on IMDb, so you know it's gotta be peak cinema. So if you want to watch more kaiju, you can buy the Blu-ray on srscinema.com or the DVD from any major online retailer. Or just watch it for free on Tubi with ads or on Prime. You can also check out my action figure photography on my Instagram at ET13_productions and my ex, the artist formerly known as Twitter, thanks Danny, at the same handle. And Rex, where can people find you at?
Well, dear listeners, you can find me on YouTube at Rexina, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram, Rex_Xena. And if you want to check out some of my writing, go take a look at the Tokusatsu Network.
And as for the podcast, don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't actually. That's a lie because I'm literally using a MacBook right now. But you can rate us on Spotify. If you want to stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook at the same handle. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually we'll have original artwork on there, but until then you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us, check out our Discord server full of others that have similar interests to you. Most recently, in our General 1 chat, it looks like there was a conversation about new Godzilla Kong, the New Empire ads, which by the time this comes out, you know, that's going to be kind of old news because the movie will be out. But hey, people are super excited about it right now. So it's a great place, great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. We sometimes post exclusive to the channel like bloopers or for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Kerchevsky on the channel. I definitely butchered his name. I'm so sorry. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found below. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DiManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Grattan Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for listening. It is fun to be back in Kawasaki Month. It's going to be a great month. We have a lot lined up, a lot of good stuff to talk about. So thank you guys. And as always, please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We are set, we are in debt, there's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. Kaiju, not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.